Okay, thank you to everybody who is attending, and the board appreciates you wearing a mask. We would appreciate that if you do not have one, there are some available right outside the doors. Thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda is communication. We have some letters of resignation. Oh, and Mr. Gonzalez, we're so glad that you're right up us.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been a great first week. Thank you for everybody for making the transition smooth and welcoming me to Lebanon. So we actually have 8 letters of resignation dating back to June 15th and going right up until July 12th. And because all of these team members are valued and contributed to our learning community, I'd like to say just a little bit about each of them. So Danielle McGuire, who was a reading consultant at the elementary school, says that she's thoroughly enjoyed her time in Lebanon and honored to have had the opportunity to work in the district for the year. It's been a pleasure not only to learn from the administrations and teachers in the district, but from my students and family as well. Amy Anderson, who's a district board certified behavior analyst. She's received an offer for the in-home setting with ages 2 to 6, and after careful consideration, she's going to accept that offer because it meets the needs of her family and her own personal needs. But she will forever be grateful for the opportunity that was given to work with the students and staff of Lebanon Public Schools. It's given her a chance to be a better clinician and to further better her skill set. We have Justin Pelletier, IT technician. He received an offer from General Dynamics, but he is extremely grateful for the opportunity that has been provided to work here for the past 3 years, and he'll miss working with everyone and helping with issues so the students can continue to learn. Holly Hollander has resigned from her position as Director of Curriculum and Instruction and says that it was an honor to serve in the role supporting teaching and learning. She was presented with an opportunity to continue her own professional journey and an opportunity that she said was truly too special to pass up. She did leave a transition plan to support the current projects that are in place and the planning process for the upcoming Rpsr application. Alan Richley, our scales teacher, has resigned from the elementary school teaching position. And the scales special education position at the middle school, Christina Mason, has resigned to accept a position that was closer to home. But she thanks us very much and says that she has learned so much from the administrators and colleagues. We got a resignation for the administrative assistant position at LES. Michelle Zimnock received an offer to return to March of Dimes, where she'll focus on donor development and volunteer recruitment with special events. But she says it's been a wonderful experience working at the elementary school. All 4 of her children moved up from LES, and it holds a special place in her heart and always will. She will truly miss all the smiling faces that she's gotten to know so well, the wonderful staff, and all those within the district. And last, we have Stacy Doherty, the attendance secretary at Lyman Memorial. She wants to thank everybody for their help and support this past year and really enjoyed her time. We have one retirement. I wanted to celebrate her efforts. Separately here, Marilyn Sylvester. It's been 20 wonderful years being employed as an instructional assistant within the Lebanon Public School System. She's decided to retire, and she takes with her heartfelt memories of Lebanon's amazing students and staff. Special thank you to her for her efforts. And I do have an exciting announcement to make tonight. Rita Quiles-Glover is in the audience. Rita, could you please share with the board who you have with you tonight?
Yeah, so thank you, Andy, very much for this opportunity. So 4 years ago, I had the same people here, because as you know, the family is incredibly important to me, just as the families at LES were. And so I do have my husband here, John. He's actually an educator, a high school teacher at Old Saybrook High School, social studies. And my son, Colton, who's 10, and Tristan, who's 13. So, I just brought them here as a reminder that this was an incredibly hard decision for me. I'm getting emotional already about it. It's grounded about the kids. And I just went to the PTA meeting at 6 and said a few words there. and it really was, Andy promised me a couple things, like that I could still visit LES at least once or twice a week. And there were also other things that he did such a wonderful job about helping me to realize professionally that I can now make an even larger impact on the community here at the school. So I'm grateful for the support. I am going to miss the kids, but I'm not going to stop seeing them. So that'll help me. And I just want to say, I know Becky's here and the school, and Jen, yes. And so, but I also can't say enough about LES. And the other piece was the transition, and so I'm grateful about Jess being able to step in because that would ease some of that anxiety I had about making sure that the school was going to be in a good place at the start. So thank you again. I'm very grateful for your support.
Congratulations, Rita, and thank you. We know that the curriculum director spot is such a critical role in our district, and we know that Andy has made a good decision, and now it's in your hands, so thank you so much. We're looking forward to working with you.
I would just echo that, extremely confident in what you're going to do for this district, to continue with the relationships you've already developed, bring your passion and love of teaching and learning and curriculum and instruction into the district role. So the central office is happy for you. I'm sure the district.
And I can't forget about the administrators, too.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, so thank you.
Thank you for bringing your family. That's what it's all about. Lucky we didn't have an all-star game tonight, because that would have been a tough decision. All-star game or mom's, new position.
Necessarily, but
Well, good luck to the rest of the all-star season, and Rita, congratulations.
And thank you for coming. Thank you. Great, thank you, Andy, and we're sorry to see those folks leaving the district who are leaving, and congratulations to Ms. Sylvester. The board does have two other areas of communication we'd like the public to be aware of. Recently, there have been 3 voicemails left on the Board of Education telephone, one from Ann Green, a second from Michael Samaha, I hope I'm saying that properly, and the third from Hugh Mazalowski. All 3 have asked the board to consider not masking students in the fall. And with that, the board has a communication that we would like to just address to the public quickly. The board appreciates and acknowledges all of the wonderful public feedback on unmasking. And we want to acknowledge the public who have already been advocating for, or I should say, against masking in the fall. One thing that I just wanted to remind everybody, if you go to LebanonCT.org, there is the Safe Return to In-Person Instruction and Continuity of Services Plan for Lebanon Public Schools. There you can find our plan as of today, but we are still under executive order until July 20th, whereas we'll be getting new guidance from the state, and we will have to adjust when that new guidance becomes available. So I just wanted to acknowledge that the board has, appreciates the input, but that's where we stand today. Okay, so we're going to move on with that to our public participation section, which we will dedicate 30 minutes to. Each individual speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. If they would like to speak, I'd like you to come, or we would like you to come to the microphone, turn it on, state your name and your address, and you'll have 2 minutes to make your statement and voice your opinion. So with that, are there any members of the public who'd like to speak tonight? Jeanette?
Jeanette Picard. I am a regional consultant at Lebanon Middle School. I'm also the co-president for our Lebanon Education Association, and I'm speaking in that role tonight. And I'm here to thank you. I'm here to thank administrators, and I'm here to thank Board of Education members for getting us through this wild ride of a year, for always thinking about the best interest of our students, for listening to teachers and their concerns, and for thinking about what would be best for our kids. And that is our main message. We just want to say thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak tonight?
This is, I forget which is...
The line.
Line's on, okay. All right, I'm Nick Constant from 244 East Hebron Turnpike. I was here last time, and I'm just here again just to talk about the masking. I'm glad that the voicemail is working and that we are getting some feedback on that. I wanted to thank you guys for putting a positive foot forward and approaching it as optional in the fall. I really appreciated seeing that. I wish that red column wasn't there. I wish that it could be optional. I understand legality and all of that stuff makes it hard for this body to make decisions contrary to the powers above it. I would like for you guys, and I spoke to Andy in our meeting about the possibility of putting forth a letter on Lebanon stock, sending it to the state and the DPH of the state, advocating for keeping your policy. Andy expressed that he thinks it should be optional. I'm sure that a lot of the members of the board feel that it should be optional for kids to wear masks, and that's what we're pushing for. We're not really against masks. I mean, if you want to wear a mask, you can wear a mask. We're for choice, and so that's I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm for choice. I just want the ability to make that decision for my kids. I also just wanted to reiterate, that I'm not really. As far as legality goes and stuff, I mean that doesn't really, I feel if you're doing what's right, what's legal really doesn't matter in my opinion. And so personally, whatever the policy is, my kids are not going to be in masks in the fall, and so whether it be that I have to send them for a few weeks and pick them up every day, I'm willing to do that. And if it comes to that, I really hope it doesn't, but if it does, I'm willing to do that, and then we'll withdraw them and we'll teach them at home, I guess, if that's really what it's going to come to. I really don't want it to be like that, and I really hope that you will really push and advocate for us, because that's not what we want. But again, it's looking more and more like he's hinting at trying to get these executive powers and continuing the mandates. So I really, it's a really crappy situation to be in as a parent when you can't, you want to do the right thing for your kids and you can't. It's really crappy. So I just hope that you can do that for us, and I'll continue to work with you guys in any way that I can. I brainstorm, I think a lot about it, of how we can make this happen and end this. But again, willing to work with any of you guys that are willing to. And that's all I had to say tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak tonight? Mr. Oakes?
So, good evening. Ken Oakes, teacher, Lyman Memorial High School. Firstly, I'd like to say welcome back to our new superintendent of schools, Mr. Andy Gonzalez. This morning, Andy stopped by our ESY classroom as he does, and he has done every day for the past 2 weeks, to greet our students and staff. After he went back to central office, I overheard one student ask another, "What does a superintendent do?" And another student replied, "The principal is the boss of the school. Mr. G is the boss of the principals. He's the super principal." And I said, I imagine the contract might have slightly different language. Congratulations also to all of our many new hires and promotions. The concept of professional advancement is alive and well here in Lebanon, and that is a very beautiful thing. I'm here to talk about Wednesday afternoons. Last October, our previous superintendent switched the distance learning model, or the district's learning model, from hybrid to full-time in-person with synchronous, and that stayed in place until the end of the school year. Mr. Angeli also wisely set aside about 90 minutes on Wednesday afternoons on a weekly basis for, quote, teacher meetings and student support. Students adopted an early release schedule every Wednesday. Our educators were then able to use this time to support teaching and learning. We made extremely effective use of this time. At Lyman, similar to the other two schools, we had Google Meets, in-person sessions with our struggling students, including students with and without disabilities, both in-person and distance learners. On Wednesday afternoons, students received targeted support from our teachers, related service providers, and instructional assistants. Since last December, our administrators were able to report to you fewer and fewer students who were failing and/or in danger of not graduating. Our flexibility to collaborate with our colleagues, with parents, and with students on Wednesday afternoons was the major factor that made this possible. Wednesday afternoons even provided teachers sometimes with the possibility of a common prep time. This is critical going forward because we presume our recently hired instructional coaches will seek to schedule meetings with multiple educators and with entire departments. Our middle school specifically is in the process of restructuring the SRBI team. They have to have all the right people sitting around a table, creating objectives, examining progress monitoring, and referring to SST when appropriate. Wednesday afternoons could be used for this also. At LES, the time's been used for teacher-parent meetings, one-on-one support for strivers, home-school collabs, and many other things that are important for student growth and achievement. Throughout the coming school year, homeschool students and distance learners will be returning, and many students will still be suffering from the long-term after effects of essentially 2 school years affected by the pandemic. Therefore, I hope you will consider continuing this valuable Wednesday afternoon time. We have used it in the way it was intended, to help close achievement gaps. I respectfully ask the Board of Education and Superintendent Gonzalez to please take a close look at this issue. Please strongly consider keeping Wednesday early dismissal in our schedule for one more school year. It has provided and will continue to provide immense benefits for all of our stakeholders. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak this evening?
I'm not sure if it's on.
The line.
My name is Liam Coulomb. I live on 41 Shunk Road. I disagree with the masks because for me, I have asthma, and it's hard for me to breathe with my asthma, and and I don't like the mask because it's really hard to breathe and I can barely even focus and all that. And if I have to wear a mask and it's not optional next year, I feel I should be homeschooled. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Leah.
You're welcome.
Good job.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak this evening?
Amy Marks from Hebron, Connecticut. So I have a daughter that goes to Lyman Memorial High School. I agree with that boy back there. Plus, there's that study that came out, JAMA, from the Journal of Medicine, that says that masks prohibit the kids to get oxygen, and they're breathing in their own carbon monoxide. So right there is something that should be considered for optional masks. And so I was just wondering, do other towns' parents come to these meetings? This is my first time. Is there, or you don't know, or?
Typically, Lebanon townspeople can provide public participation in a public meeting.
Okay. And I'd also like to say that you did a great job by getting the kids back to school in October. And my son had gone to RAM, and they didn't go back until like April. So I really appreciate that the kids went back in October. So near the end of the year, I did ask my daughter if the kids were abiding by the rules of going up the stairs where they're supposed to go up the stairs and down the stairs where they're supposed to go down the stairs, and if they were social distancing, if they were wearing their masks in the hallway. And she said no. Kids were going down the stairs that were supposed to go up the stairs and vice versa. So the kids aren't going to follow the rules anyways. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would wish to speak this evening?
Hi. So intimidating, sorry.
Tell me about it.
Scary. I know, I'm gonna sit this way or something. It's the you. So, my name is Jamie Morick. I'm on 175 Sisson Road. I just wanted to, I know, kind of like beating a dead horse now, and I apologize for that, but just with the respect to the masks, I guess my feeling is, I understand the order things go in, and you've got to follow the Department of Health and Uncas Health and all of these people. Is my hope or expectation would be that as a board, you're hearing us and taking that up the chain. You're in the position to meet with these people that us aren't, to try to help get things where they should be. Honestly, I think the amount of time and focus and attention all this behavioral health stuff is getting should show us that it's just not okay. The kids aren't okay. It was their everyday world last year. Everywhere they went, it was just how it was for all of us, and it's not like that anymore, aside from school. So to hear my daughter that loves school say that it kind of feels like jail is heartbreaking. Because they're not expected to behave that way anywhere else now. They're playing sports with their friends, they're having play dates, they're going out in public to museums and mingling and doing things, and they're not wearing the masks. And they go to school, and it's just a different world, and it shouldn't be that way. So I would like to see, it's exciting. It is exciting to hear some of the plans for how next year is anticipated to look. But that red column, it just makes me nervous that I would hope that we don't take the easy way out, right? Where when we get into vaccinations and who is and who isn't, so it's just be easy and require everyone to wear the masks. And I would really hope that we don't do that here, because it's just time. I feel that as parents, we've been expected to change direction at the drop of a hat. If there's a case or if anything happens, we've got to go home, you've got to, whatever it means for work. I'd like to see that on the other side. Right now, with the infection rates and the way things are, it doesn't seem warranted. It doesn't seem warranted that they've got to wear these. Where should something happen and it's a reasonable expectation in the future, we hope it doesn't get there, but if it does, makes sense and we go with it. And I think I would feel better about that, right? To see that we're willing to move as well in the schools, instead of just kind of locking it down. I think people come to Lebanon for that because we're just such a community, and we've lost a lot of that this past year, and it would be nice to get it back.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak this evening?
Hi, I'm Christine Hadeka. Wait, I had to press this on?
It was on.
All right, it's still on. Okay, Christine Hadeka, 624 Waterman Road. I have 3 kids. One of them's 14, one of them's 7, one of them's 5. My 14-year-old was in the system for a very long time. However, last year, in tears, I tried distance learning, and it was awful. So I actually pulled my kids, and I homeschooled them this year. So I've been out of the system this whole year. And I want to see my kids back in the school, but I just can't do it if they have to wear a mask. I just can't. So I have not enrolled them this year because I'm so uncertain as to what this year is going to look like. And I have to say, I am liking homeschool, I'm not gonna lie. But I miss school. I miss the socialization for my kids. I miss being active in the community. I feel like my friends who are in the school system are getting the emails to know when basketball tryouts are going on or when everything's going on. And as a homeschooling mom, I'm not getting that. So I just wanted to come up here and kind of reiterate what was said earlier. I'd love to see if we could do everything we can as far as writing letters to Lamont, as writing letters to, the Eastern Health District or whatever we need to do, just to let them know that the people in this small town really don't want to wear masks next year. And I understand that, Lamont has a lot more than just our small town to worry about. He's got, New Haven, Hartford, big cities that probably need masks more than we do. But I just wanted to get up here and try to kind of reiterate and beat that dead horse. So, thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Nicole. Maureen?
I would like to point out that you need a new secretary. If you look at page, let me make sure because I don't have all the pages here.
That's right.
If you look at the June 3rd minutes to policy, they say, these policies are new policies from Shipman and Goodwin, and the minutes for the meeting say, Maureen noted that these are policies we do have in our manual, we're missing not. Consequently, the minutes are incorrect, and I cannot approve them unless you correct
Policy
them.
minutes, Maureen, or
No, the
regular board?
board meeting.
Okay, so,
We're missing not.
okay, would you like to amend your,
Sure. I'd like to move that we approve the consent agenda with the one edit that Maureen has pointed out.
thank you. Motion by John, seconded by Nicole. Any discussion?
How about that new secretary?
Are we
working on that.
approving the June 8th minutes? Is that what we're...
June 8th minutes, yes. From,
Okay. There's one other problem,
Uh-oh.
Ms. Secretary, is that there was a motion by Mr. DiCaprio in that meeting in which I was not present, so
Oh, my.
section 12...
Like I said, you better fire the secretary.
No, we're not going to fire the secretary.
Should I amend my motion?
yes, please.
Yeah.
Well, but wait a
It's an
minute,
edit,
I want to
okay.
know which one it was. Which page, oh, wait a minute. Motion by him and seconded by John to return to executive session, and you weren't here. It was probably Matt, not you. Okay, I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
I said fire the secretary.
Motion by John to approve with the 2 edits, correct?
Correct.
Seconded again by Nicole, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously. Great. Thank you. And thank you, Maureen, for continuing to take these long, laborious tasks to actually write down everything that happens in this meeting. We appreciate it. Thank you. Reports of committees is the next item on the agenda. We start over with Matt. Matt, do you have a report today for EastCon? No. Nicole, are you good to go for finance and facilities?
Yep. Okay, so Finance and Facilities met on June 29th. The first thing we talked about was the LED project at all 3 schools. Conductors are on back order. There is no cost difference if we go with a different brand, which I believe is Philips. The tentative start date for installation is July 12th, which was yesterday. Hopefully that went through. We'll get more from, hopefully, our superintendent about this. Number 3 on the agenda was the ventilation project at LES. On June 16th, a mechanical engineer and architect looked at the first grade wing. Makeup air unit will go on the ground. They're thinking of placing the unit on the ground since it won't go on the roof. They can add coils to add temperate air to make up fresh units, almost like adding air conditioning in it. Then also the option stands for the 66 wing. They need to take samples on July 9th or 10th of asbestos at LES. So again, hopefully we'll get an update on that. And then finally, we talked about the seating project at the baseball field at Lyman. Scott Elliott did a nice presentation on how he would like to add seating to the baseball field. Involves a retaining wall. They're going to try and build a press box, and also these seats will be handicap accessible. They will be trying to use money and gifts and grants without the use of Board of Ed money. They're trying to install about 150 to 200 seats, and looking at a cost of about $100,000 roughly. So this project will start maybe this fall or next summer. They're looking to see how much they get in gifts and grants. So that is all for facilities.
Great. Any questions for Nicole? Great, thank you, Nicole. Dawn, communications enrollment? Okay, great. Maureen, policy?
No, we just have some things to act on today, thank you.
That's right. We have lots of second readings today.
Right.
Our action items. Mark, negotiations?
Nothing to report.
I do know that a meeting will need to come up sooner rather than later. I had a couple of communications with Rich about that, so I'm sure that he'll be reaching out to you. Danelle, curriculum.
We met, of course. Our main conversation was about the Rpsr grant and the draft that Holly came up with before she left. Is she officially done? Okay. So she reminded us of the three aspects of the grant. The first one, the ESSER 1, was the theme about that was survive, where we hired a math tutor and we received funding for tech support and infrastructure. ESSER 2 was $347,000, which we received in April 2021, and its focus was on thriving, and that money has to be used by June 2023. It focused on our sustainability, safety and wellness, math interventions, SRBI supports, and social and emotional supports. And then our main conversation was about the Rpsr grant that is focusing on transforming our schools. Let's try something new, sort of thing, with $779,000 to be used by 2024. It required a reopening plan, which is now on our website, very easily accessible. If you just go to the LebanonCT.org, it's the first thing that pops up, is our reopening plan. With this money, we hope to focus on innovation, and that's what all the talk is about. What does innovation mean? What does it look like for our district? Mr. Gonzalez was talking about a meeting that was coming up 2 days from our meeting, where the administrators would set priorities of what kind of things we want to focus on with this money. What's important, what's maybe on hold, and what's a yeah, no. Let's see. Decisions should be based on data. Our curriculum director emphasized not just what we want or what we feel we need, but what's actually needed, first by data. And then finally, our last item on the agenda was ideas for strategic planning, and we didn't really talk about that at length as a separate item because it all fits in the strategic plan, and the goals of the strategic plan are all fit in with what we're doing with our ESSER grants. So, had a good meeting.
It was a good meeting. Thank you, Danelle. Any questions for Danelle? Okay, John, superintendent evaluation.
Yes, we met briefly this evening with Mr. Gonzalez to kind of present to him, or we showed him before, to discuss a little bit the evaluation template and the procedure and process. And as it is a fairly new template, and we obviously have a new superintendent, and it's a living document. So at our retreat, we're hoping to look at once more at it, take another look at it, see if there's any modifications or changes we want to make. And to prep us for that, myself or Dawn, probably after I fail, Dawn will have to do it. But we'll send out a copy of it to all the board members. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for John? Nope. Okay. Alexis, safety and security.
No report.
Okay, and governance also met this month. We are also We're going to have our Board of Ed retreat July 27th in the afternoon. I did send you the date in an email, but I didn't give you location or time. So I'm up for feedback on this. You can just shoot me an email if you'd like, but what I was thinking, and Andy seemed to be good with this also, was that we do need to have a roles and responsibilities kind of quick down and dirty course with Rich. And we do that here on campus from 4:30 to 5:30. Would 4:30 work for you? You can just email it, you don't have to tell me now. On the 27th, which is a Tuesday, 4:30 to 5:30 here, and then maybe 5:30 to 8 off campus. So I will send you that in an email. You can feel free to respond, let me know your availability. I do want to make sure, please make every effort to attend. We will be discussing board goals along with aligning them to Andy's superintendent goals, just having that good, rich conversation about that so we can make sure we hit the ground running as Andy has already done for us. Okay, any questions on that? No? Okay, great. We're going to move on to the report of the superintendent. Your first report of the superintendent.
Sarah, before we go on, I noticed on the action items that it doesn't include the seating project, and I think they kind of wanted our blessing so that they can move forward, so do we need to...
Would you like to add an item on the
Yes,
agenda?
please. Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we please add the seating project at Lyman, for the Lyman baseball field, for action items, please?
Okay, so we're going to, you're making a motion to amend the agenda.
Yes.
By adding an action item number 12.
Yes, please.
Baseball seating.
At Lyman. Yep.
Baseball seating at Lyman. Does that work for you?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion on the floor from Nicole. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor of amending the agenda as presented, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you, Nicole.
Yep.
Okay, back to you, Andy.
All right, so jumping into the report of the superintendent, first enrollment. In your packet, you should have a chart that outlines the June enrollment from 2021 as compared to 2020. You can see that we are reporting that we're down 45 students from the previous June. However, if you look at the middle school and the high school, you can see there was only a change of 2 students, and the majority of the decline was in pre-K and K at the elementary school. Parents, I'm sure, had some hesitancy sending their child to their first school experience, given the uniquely challenging situation we were all going through. So we do hope to see a little bit of an uptick in grade 1 and in kindergarten. Already we have 46 students that are registered for kindergarten, so that is above the end of year June number, and I'm sure there are many more out there. We'll get some as, the end of July comes in the beginning of August. Something also just to point out as a reminder, 37 students last year withdrew to homeschool, so we do have 3 who have already re-enrolled, 8 that have reached out, indicated their intent to return, and 7 that won't be returning because they've moved out of district or enrolled in an alternate educational program. We will be sending an email to the remaining families that have not been in contact as a first outreach, and then we will call them personally if need be so that we have a better idea of where they stand and we can be prepared to welcome them back like we all hope to do, and I can have that included in the August BOE update.
Great, thank you.
Just taking a quick glance at the magnet school enrollment, we did have a total of 24 students that were enrolled in magnet schools last year. At the beginning of the meeting, as we recognized those who resigned and moved on for other opportunities, I had the opportunity to look through the exit interviews, which was a nice exercise for me because we want to not only know what we're doing really well as a district in supporting our staff and team members, but we also want to be looking to grow. So spent some time looking for trends and working to build systems for capacity for improvement around those exit interviews. onto our new hire situation. So with a lot of resignations and postings due to the Rpsr funding, there's a lot of hiring to be done. And in your packet, you can see that our administrative team has been actively working to fill these positions and doing so rather successfully. In the first couple of days that I was in the office, I was going over contracts with new hires and excited to welcome them to our team. Even on some of these blanks here, there have been meetings that have taken place and things are being finalized. You saw the postings that went out as it relates to some of the decisions we're making with the funding already. So we will keep you posted there. I think something that's particularly important to point out is the efforts that we continue to make to find a business manager. So I've been in touch with CASBO. I've been in touch with Creative Financial Solutions, which is a temp to permanent agency. I've been in touch with the Government Finance Officers Associations of Connecticut and had that posted there. We reposted on CT REAP. We also posted on Indeed. I've been in touch with EastCon and Learn, and I've actually cold called surrounding districts to try to find support. There doesn't seem to be another Mr. Serpinski out there, but we are going to continue to try. We do have interviews that are scheduled for July 21st. So that's something that we are moving along. Rpsr Funds. So we did meet 2 days after the subcommittee meeting as an administrative team. What we did at that meeting was we created a color-coded sheet to help visualize our priorities. We moved things into a green, yellow, red system. Green meaning something that we were going to go for now and be rather aggressive in our approach because we feel it meets the needs of our students and our staff in the moment. Yellow is something that we're still having further conversation about, something that we do feel is important to our district and ultimately hope to get, but don't want to rush to get it. And then red were some things that we had initial conversations that we just feel it doesn't meet the priority at this point and we're not going to use the funds. I think something that's important here is this is a great opportunity to accelerate learning for our students, to be innovative as a district, but we need to balance the needs of the now versus the hopes for sustainability for the future. So that's how this green, yellow, red system came into play. The grant is due August 16th. We were originally planning to submit on August 13th. Credit to the administrative team. They want to submit August 1st. So we are moving and shaking and trying to make this happen. We don't want to delay. And as you can see by the communication that I've sent out, we're already posting ahead of approval from the state. I've consulted with several other superintendents who have said the same thing. It's not a matter of if we're going to be approved, it's kind of when and how. There may need to be adjustments made within the grant. But as you can see, we put forward those postings. Building principals are forming committees and going to be ready to actively sort through applicants. We're hoping that because we've moved rather quickly, we'll still get a great pool that we can bring onto our team and really impact change quickly. Any questions about anything in the report?
So, I really love seeing the 4th and 5th grade openings or postings in the CT REAP. I'm curious to know why there isn't a 6th grade.
So we decided to post that as a 7-12 math position, but the intent is to use it primarily in the 6th grade, but we're looking for a math content specialist, someone that can really target the math needs of the building and provide that skilled instruction to our students. That would require some creative scheduling by Mr. Laskarzuski. He is aware of that. And if we don't find an applicant that we feel is a best fit for our team, we also could dive into the pool of 4th and 5th grade candidates because their certification very well could be K to 6. So we were, again, just wanting to get these postings out there, get the applications coming in, start to meet people, see if they fit, and then make the determination based on the pool.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that person, if we are able to find a math, specific person, they might be able to flex into the other grade levels in 7th or 8th and support student learning there.
Okay.
So it just gives us a little bit more flexibility.
All right, very good.
That's great. Any other questions?
If I could, just some of the things in the yellow, because I know that we all wish this green list could be longer. We talked a lot about innovation and career readiness and whatnot at the middle and high school, but those are more programmatic things that will need to be developed, things that will need to get into the program of studies, that will need to have course descriptions, that will need to be advertised and promoted. Students already have, a lot of things that they've selected to be, and so to try to develop a program in the next 4 to 6 weeks and have it up and running and have no kids in it, that doesn't do anybody any good. So that's why we tried to prioritize the staffing aggressively this year, but we are thinking a little bit longer term about what we can do to enhance the offerings at Lyman and at the middle school possibly, to really try to work to retain our own kids but attract students from other districts too. And as we move that along, Mr. Appicelli, Ms. McCarthy, we'll have them do presentations and share with you.
This is going to be a hard question probably, but how much money do you think has been already spoken for?
Yeah, so that was another reason we went to that green, yellow, red system. So when we threw out all of our wishes in that very first meeting, we had spent roughly $721,000 in year one. And that doesn't guarantee that any of those things that you put in place, you'd be able to fund through our operating budget the next year. So while that would have addressed needs in the present, it would be kind of a one-year, one-and-done type of situation, and we didn't think that was wise. So in going into this kind of breakdown, right now, we are roughly sitting at $210,000 that we are planning to spend this year to get that staffing primarily. There were a lot of things that when we looked at the list that we can do at little to no cost that are more structural changes and system changes within our district with the great teams we already have. But, obviously the postings that we put out, those cost money. But then the yellow, which grew a little bit, it was, the green was bigger going in. That shrunk down, the yellow grew. We had roughly $440,000, and when I'm saying roughly, because that grade 6 position, we're not really sure where that's going to go yet, so it could go into the green, we can get it, but depending on the pool and what we get, that could be something that gets delayed and could be a future consideration. But we cut from our original list $180,000, so we were able to expand it to 2 years and still not expend all of our money. So I think that's a healthier approach for our district and to have some of that sustainability, but still getting at the needs for our large class sizes, that student connectedness, the social emotional piece that we want to be able to address for all of our learners.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you, Andy. It's very informative. All right, we'll move on to our finance report. I noticed we have Mr. Sierpinski here with us this evening. Thank you for coming.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Sierpinski. I skipped over facilities. I'm very sorry. My error. Thank you. Sorry about that, Kevin. Do you want me to let Kevin take it?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So I'll take the board facility project update. I don't know, I think you have to proof of those printed out.
Do we all have the facilities report?
Project upgrade. Parker running daily, we have one delivery today. We have tennis boxes at the high school, but we, in the middle school and the elementary school the next couple days. We're gonna start the install at the middle school tomorrow. Another group will possibly start one by week end or beginning of next week. We have exercised the total options. We need the project on schedule for the control lighting fixes. Any questions on the light project?
Did everybody get that? Nicole, did you get that?
I'm just reading it now.
I didn't either.
I'm not finding mine either.
No, we don't have it, Kevin. Can you come back with what you just said?
Yeah, sure. So the parts are arriving daily. We're starting tomorrow at the middle school with the install. We are using the closed option because the parts coming from Mexico did not fit, they're not even being made.
Bless you.
Parts aren't being made in Mexico.
Yeah, there's a long lead time for the parts coming from Mexico, so we're not gonna use that, we're using the ones coming from Pennsylvania, they already shipped it, we're getting materials every day.
Bless you.
Okay, so we got that part.
So why are we waiting for parts from Mexico? Isn't there any? Okay, so now where are the parts coming from?
Pennsylvania.
And when will they be here?
They're already coming, we already got it.
Okay.
We already got a little bit of houses from the parts today.
Perfect, okay. Go ahead.
So we're starting tomorrow at the middle school, and we could be starting by weekend in Lyman. There's two crews. One is from Berkeley. The second crew is something from DC Electric, who is a sub to Kirk Light, who they use exclusively to do their work.
Okay.
And we'll be running 2 shifts right away.
When is the projected end date?
We're hoping to get it done by the start of the school year in September. If not, we'll continue at night only to complete the project.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Any other questions on the lighting? Nope. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, so now moving on to the makeup area at the elementary school. The opinion of construction costs, we already have the last meeting, the 66 wing, 2018 budget was 225, 697.50. We adjusted that for inflation and an uptick in materials costs to $295,000. Additionally, we had the first grade wing added to that project. That number came in at $180,000 for a total project cost of $475,000 on the opinion of the engineer.
And that's just for the makeup air units? That's not windows, that's not asbestos removal, correct?
That's correct.
Go
Does
ahead.
that include the lack of a better term, the chillers and the cost of the makeup air units?
Okay, so you're actually talking about the coil inside the unit. Yeah, that's included in the design. The final pricing will be determined when we go out to the building to receive the actual bid.
Okay.
So that number, Kevin, 475, is an exact quote, right?
That's the opinion of the engineer.
Opinion
Of the
from the
engineer.
engineer of all the materials, the labor, the construction costs, the markup, the mechanical contractors,
Okay.
That's an engineering estimate.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
assuming everything, right? But it's an opinion, Who we actually call it looking for a bid? There's an opinion of the construction cost from the engineer.
Okay, so on top of this, Kevin, on top of the 475, we have, I can't remember what you said, 600,000 for the windows?
Okay, I'll jump to the windows.
Okay.
All right, so the elementary school 66 storefront window replacement, including the lower bus loop. We received a cost estimate for the replacement of the windows only for $600,000. So I asked them for the abatement numbers and everything else. So for the abatement of the caulking, the disposal of the windows, the preparing of the area for the installation of the new windows, the trim, the sealant, the The painting comes to $450,000.
450?
That number comes to $1,050,000.
For the window replacement.
So beyond that, if this is going to become a school building project, which it probably will most likely be, if we're going to fund that through the state, you can have another 30% of that number, coming to a total of $1,300,000.
What was that?
What, can you repeat that? What was the 1,300,000?
Okay, so obviously it's over $1 million, but the town will fund is going to fund that as a school building project.
Okay.
So if we're going to do that, we're going to fund it through the state. If we fund it through the state, going through the state for typically, you're going to have another 30% of that number. You'll get reimbursed, I can't remember the exact number, it changes all the time. The town will get reimbursed usually typically 40, 50, 60% of that number. So the beginning number is going to be $1,300,000.
So why did it go from 1,500,000, why did it jump to 1,300,000? What made it go up from that original number? That was 1 million.
Because I have to go through the state, man. So to go through the state, there's certain criteria you have to go through the state. If they have a building committee, we have to utilize, I can't think of the name of it. Instead of paying somebody $50 an hour, we get paid $100 an hour. To the contractor, right?
Okay, that's what I'm, okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty much right,
So, that window project and the air project combined, what does that come to? At your estimate with updating at the 20?
You got 475 and 1.3 million.
Right, but aren't you gonna make the 475 20% more also?
30%.
40%? Huh?
That number's in there unless.
But if we go through this, what if we
make that an over the same process, I don't think we have to. Doesn't have to become a building project, if you will.
Right, but we need to look at it from both angles of putting it all together as one big building project, or do we want to pull it out and do it separately on our own without the state? Because you get funding from the state, like you said, about 50%, correct?
Yeah, depending on what the project is, it's 40, 50, 60%.
So on average, 60%. So what you're saying is that if I do the numbers quickly in my head, you're at about $2 million, and if the state picks up a half of it, that's $1 million the state picks up, $1 million the town has to come with. So that means that if we did it without the state, we'd have to pay the $400,000. So it's kind of like getting the air handlers, almost the air part of it from the state, and we're paying for the windows like we would have originally.
That's correct.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I follow, yeah.
I would like to, since you're talking about, this is not a project thing, but I'd like to go into the, just into the mix of Lyman Group project as well, if you're going to be talking about this kind of money. Washington Technology gave us a number, and they presented it to the board, of $1.8 to $2.2 million. Again, that can be reimbursable from the state of Connecticut. These are property all lumped together, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Okay, so you're saying fixing the roof at the high school?
Replacing the roof.
Okay,
That's already on our capital improvement, long-term.
right, I understand, I just.
Yeah.
I understand what he's saying.
So what's involved in applying to the state for this? Is this like a lengthy time, like application? What's the next step is what I'm asking.
Well, it's not time, it's just actually the application process is kind of arduous, if you will.
And who's in charge of filling that out?
That would be with the engineer, the superintendent, the town 11 police department, it's gonna be a bunch of different individuals all coming together to do that.
So my recommendation is, Kevin, if I'm seeing that there is a report, but I don't have it in front of me, if you could just send that back, the report that you're speaking from, with all of the things that you've just said are in writing. I just don't have it in front of me.
I don't either.
But I'm hoping that you can send that, and then is that something Nicole and myself could bring to the Board of Finance to move it, and Andy as well, bring it to the Board of Finance and say, this is where we're at. We have a specific dollar amount now, we have more information on the projects. I think we're at that point now where we need to communicate this to the town, correct?
Absolutely. The only piece of that feeling is when I can speak to the first off, you want me to go on, I'll speak about the asbestos testing.
The asbestos testing
Oh, okay.
in the schools.
And that's at the middle school?
Yes.
And the elementary school. Isn't there some extra testing?
Yeah, but that's separate from the ventilation. We made
Okay.
those two separate projects. Yep. Go ahead, Kevin, talk about the asbestos.
Okay, so we took samples yesterday in the elementary school and the middle school. We took 21 samples, including the 56 windows, the caulking samples for PPG, and obviously for asbestos. The kitchen floor and sulfates at the elementary school. The hallways and samples taken from areas that are doing suspect on the interior report provided by Mr. Harris. The middle school did the same thing. We took 36 samples of the hallways, the classrooms, the winter carpeting in the office, the computer lab, and anything between suspect by Mr. Harris. The samples and results are due back in approximately 2 weeks. A report of the findings, including the preliminary abatement cost, will be sent in a week and a half after that. That does not include replacing interiors with VCP.
So what you're saying is that this is what you have on docket to be done, correct? These testing?
And all the testing is going to be completed, and I gave them a square footage account of all the areas that possibly have asbestos containing material in them. Once the report comes back, that these areas have positive asbestos containing materials, they're going to give me a price when we'll take those materials. After that, it'll be up to me to continue on forward to replace any areas that they have flagged as being ATM positive.
Does everybody understand what you're saying?
Yeah, so we have to wait 2 weeks.
So it's gonna basically, we're not gonna have any information till the next meeting.
We won't get a number of those projects we have, right?
What does the board think? Do you think that we have enough information, or should we wait for the asbestos removal?
Well, the only other question that I want to ask him is that you talked about the roof at the high school, about replacing it. That figure was from the company from 2.5 years ago, correct?
No, they actually visited us this past fall, I believe.
Okay.
Michael Turtle actually presented to the board, I'm going to say, last October maybe?
Before that, that's always the previous year, but that's okay.
Yeah, this sounds like the previous year.
All right, but in any case, it's a little bit of an old, it's at least about a year old, correct?
That's correct.
And then does that number that you gave us, which was 1.2 million?
1.8 to 2.2 million.
2.2 million per roof.
Correct.
Okay, so that number, does that include the 30% increase if we go through the state?
That can go through econ. We have this actual plan managed by econ. There's a way that they can manage the plan, offer them who won't work for us. That was an estimate from Pronto. We don't even have to go off the bid, that can go to econ. There's an avenue to go that way, that route.
And that would that qualify for state funding?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what do we think? Do we need to wait to get
We need to
the
wait.
asbestos numbers?
I'd really like one big package to put before the town so that we can say, this is what needs to be done.
I don't know if I want to go that route. I don't want to scare the town. We go and put like $2-3 million in front of them, they're gonna like never give us another penny again.
But they do know it's coming. We have been very communicative with them that these are our projects.
I mean, they've started the library project without issue.
Right, but I want to move forward with LES, like, that's been a long time coming. Like, the abatement at LMS, you know, it's been dormant for the past few years, that can kind of wait a little bit, but LES, I really want to move forward with that.
The only thing, and I agree with you, the only thing is, if we're gonna be ripping it all up anyway, we may as well be abating it, abating
Yeah.
what we can. I agree with you, I'm right there, but...
I'm just afraid they're gonna say no. That's...
Well, again, I think a couple of weeks to get all the information, and then we can sit down and divide it out.
Yeah.
If we think we need to. I think it's a better way to look at it.
Okay,
To get as much information as we can have going forward.
all right,
Yeah, I agree with that, too. I think we should wait for the samples to come back,
yeah,
so we
definitely.
get a fuller picture of what we're dealing with.
Kevin, as soon as they come back, can you let Andy know so we can get a Finance and Facilities meeting on the books right away? Hopefully, we won't even have to wait for the next board meeting. I mean, I know it's the summer, but pushing it.
I'm trying to send this to the poll down and hold back in my place.
Yeah, and in the meantime, Kevin, can you have Anchor Engineering put in writing the $600,000 for the windows, the $445 for the, $475 for the ventilation? Can you have all this in writing so that when we go...
I'm trying to send you right on the poll.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is that it, Kevin?
I think that's it, we'll get some more questions. I just sent them the poll, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kevin? Or about facilities? No? Okay, now we'll move on to our budget.
Well, thank you. Before I start on the financial report, I'd just like to dovetail on the business manager search for a minute. I checked yesterday on REAP and Casbo website, and there are 10 vacancies in the state. So it's a difficult situation for a lot of districts, and some of them have been open for a while. I've had a few conversations with Andy regarding the steps he's taking, and I'm at a loss to suggest anything different than he's doing. So I want you to know he's doing everything possible to fix the situation, but it's just difficult out there, and I don't know why more qualified people haven't been applying here, because it's a good place to work. So that's just the way it is now, and I don't know why.
Thank you, Bob.
So anyway, on the financial report, I apologize for not being able to get these to you, but I've been working to get this, and it's year end, and it just takes a little longer. You have 3 documents there, and they're all related to the end of 2021. As you know, this is also the end of the quarter, so it's time for the update on the capital accounts and as well as the non-lapsing, so I'd like to start with that. I tried to do a 1-page bullet summary in addition to having the actual detail listed. So basically, the SIP account, which is the school improvement account, as of June 30th, the balance in the account is $88,444,000. That does not include the town appropriation of $100,000 that was done at the budget year, so as of July 1st, that amount would be added to that. I did want to point out, though, that the last invoice that's reflected on the town report was dated April 14th, so I don't know if the facilities director has more invoices related between April and June 30th that the town hasn't processed or are sitting in the school's finance office, so I don't know that. Moving on to technology capital, the balance was $36,462. There will be a town deposit that was made on July 1st of $90,000, so that would be added to that. And the last invoice for technology was dated, processed on 6/29, so that appears to be current. On the athletics capital, the balance is zero, and the $30,000 would be appropriated on July 1st, so that would be available to use at the schools and board's discretion. Then the non-lapsing fund, the ending balance is $330,000, $648,000. And that's an important number for you because, as you know, the budget was reduced with the understanding from the Board of Finance that it was up to the Board of Education to use those funds if you needed to address special ed education expenses. So I think that'll be important for you going forward. So if you have any questions related to the capital accounts or non-lapsing, I'd be glad to entertain them.
So on the non-lapsing fund, that
330,000?
right, all of that can only go to special education or a portion of that?
No, the way the town had passed the ordinance, initially it was for capital items, and then I believe it was the previous fiscal year, they amended it to include special education expenses because the budget year we were facing, we had a potential shortfall of a few $100,000. As it turned out, when the school year started, there was a lot of movement between special ed and we didn't need to use those funds at all. So that would be up to the Board of Education to either use the funds if needed for capital projects or any special ed expenses. So I would think you have two options probably. To balance the 21-22 budget, expenses that were budgeted in special ed were removed from the budget that the director had put forth and approved by the Board of Ed, with the understanding that if you needed to, you could pull that money from non-lapsing. So you could either initially pay a few $100,000 of special ed expenses, or you can choose to wait and see how the year goes. That would be the advice that I'd give to you. So I think depending on what happens in special ed or other areas, you're going to probably have to use those funds in some way, shape, or fashion.
Nicole? So what you're suggesting is that we should try and spend that amount down before the next budget season?
If you need to. I mean, Cheryl will be the first person, you've heard me say this a dozen times, special education is financial roulette.
Right.
2 years ago, when we presented the budget, we had some students move into district. We had a bad combination of students that were not over the threshold, so even though expenses were going to stay the same, we were going to not receive reimbursement, but conditions changed, and that year we intended to have to use that for special ed, but in the end, we didn't have to.
Right. So what I'm saying is, like, let's say there is no movement in special ed, or they use very little of this money over the year. If we come up with this number to the Board of Finance when we do budgets again next year, are they going to start saying that we have too much money at the Board of Ed budget? Is it in our best interest to spend this down?
I don't think so. In fairness to the Board of Finance, they recognized that your budget was appropriate. They chose to use that methodology of funding to meet those needs if you need to. I might not agree with that, but their opinion was that your budget was sound. If you use non-lapsing funds to fund any operating item, if that operating item is still there, then the following year you have a bigger increase. That's a chance they took. You could have movement on the special ed side, and let's say special ed expenses are $200,000 less, and you don't need to use the non-lapsing funds. You still have those funds available for capital projects or the future year's budget. And special ed is a very difficult number to budget when you're doing it 12 to 18 months ahead of time.
Okay.
Students come and students go and programs change. So you do have that option to use all of those $330,000 if you need to meet special education expenses. And I would suggest doing that if those special education expenses are not potentially offset by budget savings elsewhere. I mean, I don't know the impact of hiring. You know, we made assumptions, people have retired. If you had someone who retired at MA 13 and you hired them at BA 2, you got savings there. So
Or
you
the
have to...
flip side, right? This is a
The
very
new finance
crazy
person
year.
can have to do
Yeah.
some analysis to advise you on that.
Thanks, Bob. Any other questions on capital?
Okay, then, on grants, you have 2 pages there. One, the second page is the detail listing all of the grants. And there's a current balance carry forward of $434,000 to be spent, and most of that is for years in 21, 22. It does not include grants that have not been created yet, such as Title I for those grants don't come out until October, but I thought I'd just focus on the top sheet on the status of grants that expired on June 30th of this particular year. So I listed them in their groupings, like the 2 title grants, the 2 IDEA grants, the 2 school readiness grants, and Title IV. So there's quite a bit of money there, and almost all of the money was spent. You know, there was $400 in Title I that was not spent. That was money that was allocated for professional and technical services, and I think that might have been difficult to spend given this environment in terms of in-school, out-of-school, getting some of the PD or services to come in and do work. The only other 2 grants that didn't spend all of their money was the Competitive School Readiness Grant, had a balance of $25, and Title IV had a surplus of $2,400 roughly, and I was talking with Rita this evening, if we can find some expense that was expended in the Board of Ed budget during the fiscal year that would qualify as a Title I expense, I can move that money from the Board of Ed into that. So she's going to be discussing that with some of her curriculum colleagues to find out what qualifies as a Title IV expense under that spending category.
Great, thank you, Bob. Any questions on that? Okay.
And then the year-end forecast. This has been a moving target. It's shrunk a little bit over the last 3 or 4 months due to some unforeseen circumstances. I can't give you a more hard and fast numbers simply because of the state of the finance office the way it is right now. There have been no invoices processed since June 16th related to normal operating expenses. There's been no one to do that. Consequently, there's a stack of bills in there that need to be paid. And the reason that becomes problematic is there should be a PO for all of those expenses, and I'll give you an example using athletic transportation at the high school for student transportation. I know there's an encumbrance out there for $12,000 or $13,000. That PO was originated probably in March based on anticipated travel for student going to athletic events. Well, the bills have come in now. I don't know exactly how much they are. They could be $5,000 or $6,000, $7,000. So what would happen normally, that bill would be paid and processed, and that amount is charged against the purchase order, and any residual goes back into the general fund. So if expenses were $7,000 against a PO of $12,000, now there's another $5,000 that drops to your bottom line. Sometimes it goes in reverse, but not too often. As of this past week, the dollar value of the encumbrances is $450,000. So that's a lot of money. So I've looked at them and I can make some educated guesses, but the balance is, at this point in time, has never been that high. So the new person who starts tomorrow, once she processes payroll, well, her next priority has to be getting these bills into the system, because we won't know exactly where we stand at year end. And in August, the year-end state reporting begins, and that year-end report is due at the state September 1, and it's not impossible, but the report can't be done properly until most or all the expenses are into the financial system. So right now, I'm assuming that will be at least $50,000 to the good, but that number it's kind of like a moving target right now.
Thank you for that explanation. Go ahead, Nicole.
Okay, so I attended the audit meeting last week, and I think Andy was there too, and Sarah for part of the time. There were three things that I got out of that meeting. Is one, the September 1st report that you're talking about. So you're saying that there's a possibility we'll be on time with that report, or it might be problems?
You have to be on time with that report.
Yeah.
I was discussing this with Andy, and I called the state yesterday. That report is called the EFS Financial System Report. It used to be called the ED-001, and 3 years ago, the state migrated to a new platform for that. The superintendent will get a letter next week or the following week reminding districts that it's this time of year to do the begin your year-end report. The system is open to start doing the work, and the last paragraph, they put a threat in there that says if you don't have this report on time, you could be subject to a $10,000 fine. I don't want to scare you, but I don't want to say it's an idle threat, but only in the history of the state has any district ever been fined, fined once, and they didn't have to pay it. The state does not want to take $10,000 from a town or school district. It's not a good practice, but nevertheless, it's there. There's no opportunity to ask for an extension of time. They won't grant one. As when I talked to the gentleman in the state, and I've worked with him for several years, and he's a great guy, he said what you do is you can't ask for permission, you beg for forgiveness to be late, or just explain something. Or you submit it the way it is with the data you have. And what ends up happening, this happens every year, I submitted it last year on time, and then the audit process begins, and after the auditor always finds an adjustment, $1,000 here, $2,000, so the state reopens the report, you go in and make the audit adjustments and you change it. So to the extent that you have encumbrances out there that might or not be settled, it can be filed without those things happening, but the smaller that number is, the better it is, but the report really needs to be done on time.
So will you be doing that report this year for us?
I'm hoping not to, because I'm tired.
Oh, I bet you are. But will you if we have no business manager? Or is the bookkeeper going to be in charge of this? No.
A bookkeeper can't do this.
Right, so...
I showed Andy the manual, the instruction guide is 180 pages long. So if you've never done one before, once you've done one, it becomes easier, and it's a new system, so every year there's some modifications to it. It probably takes of dedicated time, I'm guessing 40 to 50 hours to do. So
that's a lot.
I mean, I can discuss that with Andy some more, but...
Okay, the second thing that I got out of it, and I'm not sure what she's talking about, but Valerie mentioned that our student activities, and I don't know what she's talking about when she says student activities, but they're in the red.
Our student activity funds?
I don't know what she meant by that.
I don't know what she means. I wouldn't know what she means by that.
So if anyone can find out what she meant by that, that'd be great.
I can ask her.
Okay. And then the last thing that was mentioned, which is really important, is I think in the fall, we really need to take a look at all of our scholarships, because we have been dipping into the principal amount and not the interest accrued, and we're only supposed to be using the interest accrued to give out scholarships amounts, so I'm not sure where to start with that, but I don't want to be like...
I had to deal with that in one district, and that's a very common practice. What happened back in the 1980s, oftentimes someone passed away, and maybe their passion might have been track or cross country or math. And depending on the district, if you had a high school or a middle school, oftentimes, say a deposit was made or a scholarship was created, and we'll put $10,000 in a fund, and it would be the Billy Smith Excellence in Track Award, and each year it was written that the best female and male athlete in track would get an award of $250 from the principal. But when interest was 18 and 20%, that was no problem. So what happened, interest fell 1%, 2% or 0.5%, and you can't meet that commitment anymore. And technically, from an audit standpoint, those are restricted funds, and you have to follow the letter of the intent. So you wouldn't be able to make that award if things continue as they are for 10 or 20 years, and everybody knows that wasn't the intent of the bequest. So what we had to do in one district was contact every family member or the descendants and get permission from them to say, hey, if you want us to give this award, you have to sign this letter saying it's okay to use the principal. It was a lot of work and a lot of effort, and we were able to do that. I've also been told there's another way around it. I'm not sure what that is, but that would have to be investigated. So you are technically correct. If the scholarship that was created says it should come from the principal and principal only, interest and interest only, that's what you're supposed to do. And if there's not enough money earned, you can't do it. It's a problem for many, many school districts.
Okay, so I'd like to make sure we're okay with that in the fall, because I believe, generally do students start applying for scholarships? Is it in January, February? Maybe, Jay, do you know?
It's usually later, it's like April, May.
Okay.
And then we meet as a scholarship committee, late May to June.
Okay, so in the winter, maybe we can look at all the scholarships and just make sure we have the correct amounts.
And Nicole, Valerie at that meeting also said that she was going to contact Christine Shalafo and get some information on the scholarships beforehand. So maybe at some point during the fall, as the finance chair, you could call a meeting with all of those parties. That would be fantastic.
Perfect.
One problem that gets encountered is sometimes it's very difficult to find I'll call it the terms and conditions of the original award letter or intent when the scholarship was set up. And some of these were set up 30 years ago or maybe even longer, so you might have to consult with counsel or someone at the state or someone who can offer some appropriate advice. But it's a common problem for many school districts.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Question, go ahead, Danelle.
Sorry, not a question for Bob. So we have an item on the agenda that's number 12, and we have two presenters here. Is there any way we can move them forward so they could go home or not?
We sure can, although I believe we're about to wrap up with finance report and we're on to action items right now.
Are we good?
Jacques?
And that non-lapsing number you said, was that including the 2014 shortfall for the budget on 21, 22, or no?
Yeah, that's as of June 30th, what's in non-lapsing.
All set? Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate that. I did recognize that, Danelle. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, we'll move on to our action items. Item number 1, act on letters of resignation. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we accept the letters of resignation.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by John, seconded by Nicole. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the letters of resignation, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, letter of retirement.
I make a motion that we accept the letter of retirement with regret.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Nicole. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously as well. Item number 3, act on increase in substitute rates of pay. Andy, would you mind giving us just a little bit of background? I think this is going to sound familiar to most.
Sure. So in 2019, Governor Lamont signed some new legislation that's going to increase minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2023, and it's kind of incrementally increased. The board did address this last year, so this year it's moving up to $13 on August 1st. If we don't move on this item, we would not be meeting that requirement for our substitute custodians, substitute secretaries, substitute instructional assistants, and substitute teachers for the first 25 days in district. So the new proposed rates would just be to move all of those to the $13 an hour rate.
Any questions? Actually, is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to increase substitute rate of pay to 13. As presented by.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion by Nicole, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Is there a motion on the floor? Maureen?
I would just like to make a quick address on these policies. The first one is a policy that we already have on the books. We made a slight change to it, and the next 6 are new policies that we got from Shipman and Goodwin, and you'll notice that 4004 is missing because somebody missed it. And so that will get addressed at another time. But I would like to move that... Yes. I would like to move that we accept the second reading of all 7.
So you are making a motion on action items 4 through 10.
Yes.
To approve?
To approve.
Motion by Maureen, seconded by Matt. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 11, act on the Lyman softball field trip to Disney World. There's some, do we have any background on this trip?
This was the same exact trip that they were supposed to do in 2020. That was approved by the board. So it got postponed. They obviously couldn't go in 2020, couldn't go this year either. So it's the same exact trip to Disney that they're proposing for 2026.
Great.
There's actually another trip that's in the same boat. Do you remember the girls soccer team was going to go to England?
Yeah.
They're going, I didn't bring you with me, I forgot to tell Andy, sorry. But they wanted to do that same exact trip also. So that will be another one that'll come to you on that.
Sounds good, Jay. And as you know, our board has to approve any out-of-state field trips.
Or overnight trips.
Or overnight trips. All of the above. And/or. Okay. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to approve the field trips the out-of-state field trips for the Lyman teams. Is it all teams?
Lyman softball to Disney World.
We have to do them each individually. It can't be a blanket.
Are we including the England trip?
No.
No, okay. Okay. Okay, so let's try this again. Motion to approve the LMHS softball field trip to Disney World.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion by Nicole, seconded by John. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the field trip? Raise your hand, and that passes unanimously. Okay, action item number 12. Nicole, would you like to?
Yep, so just, like I said before, there's a seating project that Scott Elliott would like to begin to the baseball field, and he is not going to use Board of Ed funds. He would just like to start the project, and he will be using money and gifts and grants without using Board of Ed money. So this is basically just a kind of like we're giving him our blessing so that he can get started with whatever he has to do. Again, this is 150 to 200 seats available. Right now, there is no seating available at the Lyman baseball field. It will include handicap accessible. It includes trying to make a retaining wall and a press box. And the cost is roughly about $100,000, and they would like to start this fall.
Scott, would you like to add anything to that? I'm sorry, no.
Sure. First, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this, and I went to Nicole.
Sorry, can you come to the mic just so people at home can hear you? I'm sorry.
Just flip it on.
Is it on the line?
It is now?
Perfect.
Hi, everybody at home. I'd like to, again, thank everybody for the opportunity to speak on this project. I came last month to the subcommittee with the thought of trying to get your blessing, your approval to start this project. And in most cases, if you go up to our baseball field, it's not exactly fan-friendly. And I'm sure some of you have been up there. We have to either sit 400 feet away behind the outfield fence in some cases, or you're sitting in an outdated bleacher set that in most cases you can't even see home plate unless you sit in one specific spot. And those people that attend baseball games regularly know where that spot is. They get there early and then nobody else can sit there. So we're looking at trying to expand the opportunity for people, the community in general, to come up and visit and see, obviously, our baseball team play. We've exhausted a lot of different thoughts as to how we can make this happen, and we think we've come up with a plan that will provide extra seating. And like it already has been stated, we're looking at about 150 to 250, somewhere in there, seats added roughly behind home plate. And what we would do is we would create a wall, a retaining wall behind the home plate area. We would bring in material there and pour a slab so that we have a solid foundation, and then we would bring in seating on top of that so that we could see the entire field. And we have worked with certain people to try and get some of this stuff underway just so that we can see what it looks like. We have a schematic with the work that needs to be done and the materials that need to be brought in. That's roughly about $50,000 to $55,000 worth of materials to bring in, and then the seating on top of that is about $45,000 to $50,000, somewhere in that world. We're looking at the opportunity for people to be able to see the entire venue, and that's the whole point. Is you'll be behind home plate, but you'll be able to see down the left field line, you'll be able to see down the right field line and see everything that happens out in front of you. Anybody that was up on our field in 2017 for the state quarterfinal, we hosted a school that is a little more affluent than the Lebanon community, and the first comment that was made by more than half of them showing up here is, why didn't we host this? Why do we have to come here? We can't see. This is just an awful place for us to be. Now, that's opinions, and we all know how we deal with opinions, but through that experience back in 2017 and what we had to deal with this past spring with the COVID experience and the requirements that were brought down to us by CIAC and the league and the ECC about requiring people to be 6 feet apart, requiring people to wear masks, and if you ever came up to the park to see a game, everybody was in one area. There was nowhere to go. There was nowhere to put people. The majority of people were behind the fence 400 feet away. Really probably couldn't see the strike zone, couldn't see their kid hit, stuff like that. So it kind of opened our eyes as to what our needs might be with that particular facility. And then you come into the thought process of, what does this look like in terms of Title IX, in terms of the softball field, and how does this whole thing play out? And our thought process there is that in the softball world, you essentially, aside from right behind the dugouts, you have a 360-degree view of the entire field. There's literally no obstruction anywhere, and that's why we were trying to look at something that we could bring more people in. And based on the fact that most people have been home with COVID, we've heard a number of people speak tonight about maybe not even having their kids in the building. We'd like to try and bring back the community, and I think the fact that COVID has really kind of put us back into our houses and our homes, this might give us an opportunity now to, as they start to come back out and the world starts to get back to hopefully a semblance of normal, we can now start to invite more and more of the community members up here. And I think that if we look at our numbers across the board in terms of participation, my anticipation is that we're going to start to see a little bit of a spike, an increase in our numbers of participation based on the fact that people have been dormant for such a long period of time. We can take advantage of that and hopefully invite more and more of the community to come out and see some of our programs, and that's really the reasons behind what we're trying to do. And like Nicole has alluded to a couple of times, we're trying to do this without using the money from the Board of Ed. We're going to try and go out and solicit some donations and gifts and look into grants. We've had some conversations with some people to try and see if we can write some grants to bring in the money that's necessary to get this done. But in terms of finding the timeline, I thought it was important for us to come here first and make sure that everybody was on board, everybody understood what the project entailed, to see if we could get approval from this body before we start to move forward. I did not want to come here and say, hey, we've got this all all done, here we go, now it's on you, and put that pressure. That's not the way that I operate. So I am here tonight looking for your approval, essentially. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I have one question. As far as payment for the project, could you keep us posted on how funding is going? I just wonder about, it wouldn't come out of the Board of Education's funding, right? But would it somehow come out of spectators? Would spectators have to pay for it? That type of thing
We're
in the
hoping no.
future?
We're not looking to charge admission or anything and create an account so that we can use the funds there. We're not looking to do that. And traditionally, for example, the soccer games and soccer events, that stuff goes into a light account that's specific. So while we charge admission there, that money goes directly to the lights, so it pays for the lights. That's not even something that comes out of Board of Ed money. So that we wouldn't look to go down that avenue at all. We may look at the baseball student activity account to house those funds so that we can, I don't want that money sitting on my desk or anything like that. We would have to put it somewhere so that we could then send out the checks that need to go. So we may look at something like that avenue. I have to explore that a little bit more. I don't have that concretely done
Yeah,
yet.
just if we could just stay posted on
Sure.
how that's going, offer support in ways that we can, that would be great.
Definitely.
Do a fundraiser or something like that.
Yeah, we would probably look in that direction at times, sure.
John?
Yeah, admittedly, I'm a little biased, so it's not a question. Scott and his staff does a great job on the field. No field is better maintained than that field, and quite honestly, I hate to admit it with him here, but we have probably the best coach in the state here, and it's a shame that it is hard to watch a game there. I mean, you really end up down the left field line or out in right field with Scott, or a lot of different spots, and a project like this would be so wonderful. It's a long time coming. I really wish you
Not to
well.
mention the fact that that program just supported a Major League Baseball player that was drafted last night, so.
I was just going to chime in, since we were giving compliments to coaches, to congratulate Colton Bender being drafted to the Padres. That's an awesome accomplishment for himself, for his family, for our community. Congrats to you, too, for, what you've done for those programs. And I think, the idea behind this would add to the attractiveness of our sports programs, but of our facilities, really bring some pride to the community. Just a couple comments on my part.
Thank you.
Did we ever get a second on that? I don't keep my notes right.
I don't think we made a motion.
Nicole brought
No, we didn't have a motion.
Wasn't a motion, okay.
No, we're just getting a little background. So what will the motion be, however, because I'm thinking about our support, or do we even need to make a motion and just kind of express our support for the project, because we are not...
Why don't we make a motion that we support as Board of Ed, we support the...
Seating project at Lyman.
The baseball seating project at Lyman.
Okay.
Does everybody
Just
feel?
a statement.
Okay, go ahead.
Motion to approve, or offer our support to the baseball seating project at Lyman.
I second it.
Any discussion? Dawn?
So I'm completely in support, but logistically speaking, it's been said multiple times that it's not coming from Board of Ed funds, and I feel like that also, are we supporting the fundraising aspect? Because what happens if we, sadly, don't reach that number? What happens next? I hope we do and surpass it, but I'm just wondering what happens next.
It's a great question. Obviously, we wouldn't start the construction, if you will, of said project without the funds necessary. So the first part is to go down that road and secure the funds necessary, and then get involved with the completion of the project. So it's kind of multiple steps here moving forward. So there wouldn't be anything constructed, if you will. So that's kind of the direction that we would go, with the hope that we would be able to complete the project.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of showing support for the baseball seating project, please raise your hand. And that passes unanimously as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Last item on the agenda, items for next agenda. Does anybody have any items for the next agenda? August.
I don't know if we have to say it. I think Andy's already planning on doing it, but the enrollment, just numbers, who's coming back in August, because that's our last month before September starts.
Anything else? No? Okay, seeing none.
secretary?
What?
No new secretary.
We'll look for one. Recording secretary, that would be fantastic. And we will adjourn at 9:16. Thank you very much.
Talking about a new secretary. Okay, I want to talk